Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The month of May, end of May, is prom season in Michigan and around most of the country. And what Shelley Washington should have been able to do during the month of May was plan her daughter's senior prom. Plan to pick out dresses with her, do everything she needed to do to get ready for her last year of high school, her prom. A big moment in a lot of seniors' lives. Instead, a few months earlier, what Shelley Washington had to do for her daughter Janae was plan her funeral. Back in the early days of January, on January 6th, on Radnor Street in the city of Detroit on the east side, Shelley Washington was at home with her daughters, Janae and Rachel, her adoptive son Joshua, and his girlfriend. Nothing out of the ordinary on January 6th. They all went to bed as usual. Around midnight, Joshua came home with his girlfriend Ayana, and Janae let them in the house. They stayed down in the basement. Janae and her sister Rachel had bedrooms on the main floor. At some point, Janae went back to her bedroom. She popped open her laptop, was watching Netflix on her laptop. Her sister was in the room next to her. Her sister saw her sometime between 12 and 3 o'clock in the morning watching Netflix in there. She could hear it from her room. The last time Rachel saw her sister Janae before they all went to sleep that night was around 3 o'clock in the morning. 3 a.m. She saw Janae sleeping in her bed with the Netflix still playing on her computer. The next thing that anyone in that house realized happened was around 7:20 in the morning. Now, it's Janae's mom, Shelley. It's her standard practice when she wakes up in the morning to get ready for work that she calls her kids to wake them up for school. And that morning she called Janae. Janae didn't answer her phone. Didn't think anything of it. So she started getting ready, went downstairs, was telling the kids to wake up. Nothing scurrying in Janae's room. So Shelley decides, gotta get her up. So she goes in there. And instead of being able to wake Janae up to get ready for the day, she sees Janae face down in her bed in a pool of blood. Blood splattered all over the wall, blood coming out of her head, a whole mess in there. So Shelley starts screaming and yelling for everyone in the house to get up. Rachel hears this. Rachel starts getting up. Shelley's yelling at Rachel, call 911. They call the police. Janae's in her bed, on her stomach, breathing, but not awake. At some point, Shelley ultimately rolls Janae over on her back, and she notices that she's still breathing, but they can't get her to wake up. Blood's all over her head, all over the bed. She notices that she's still in pajamas she had on the night before, a white t-shirt and some pink underwear. Except the pink underwear is pulled to the side. So ultimately, police show up, EMS arrive, EMS takes Janae to the hospital. Police start doing their work at the house. Some of the evidence you're going to hear in this case is testimony from some evidence technicians. What type of work they did when they got to this house on Radnor, Janae's house. One of the things they did was they looked around the house. Well, what's going on here? Did someone come inside? Well, Janae's got 2 windows to her bedroom. One that's right next to her bed, and one that's on the other part of the room. And when the evidence techs were looking around the house, they noticed something on the window. What looked to be fingerprints. So they did their work. They dusted the window and pulled up some fingerprints. Ultimately, those were taken to someone else at the Detroit Police Department, and they were run through a system that sees if they will match anyone. And it comes back with a possible suspect. And that possible suspect was a young man named Daraian Winfield, who's seated right there. Detroit police ultimately go out and arrest him. You're going to hear how they had him in a room, a few officers, and they interrogated him for a few hours. And they talked to him about what was going on to see if he knew anything. And you're going to hear how he told the police that, yeah, he was often at this house, but he never went inside. He was just peering in through the windows. I want you to listen to that, because he's adamant he was never inside the house. But I looked in him. Yeah, that's fine. I looked in him. That makes sense why my fingerprints are on the one I looked in him. Puts himself at the house. But I want you, when the evidence comes in, you're going to hear him never say that he was in the house. But the police did other work inside that house. Ultimately, when Janae's taken to the hospital, the cops asked for what we call a sexual assault forensic examination kit to be done. We commonly refer to these as rape kits. One of those was completed on Janae. And part of that kit, as you'll hear from the nurse, is to collect evidence. And one of the pieces of evidence that was collected was Janae's pink underwear. Now, the police then sent that off to the lab for testing. About the same time that police were talking to Mr. Winfield, other Detroit officers went to a location where he purportedly lived. And when they got there, you'll hear testimony how they met Mr. Winfield's mother. And she told them, he doesn't live here. He lives down the street. I'll show you where he lives. They ultimately go to Mr. Winfield's apartment. When they go inside, they look around, they find some things in there. Two of the things that you'll hear they found were some clothing. Because they had on it what they believed to be blood. So that clothing was collected, and that was also, with the rape kit, that was also sent off for testing. Now this is where you need to keep in mind what Mr. Winfield tells the police. I was never in the house. When the testing of the underwear is done, you'll hear it was tested positive for the presence of semen. And that semen came back to Daraian Winfield. Then you'll hear how one of the pieces of clothing collected from Mr. Winfield's apartment tested positive for blood. And that blood came back to Janae Washington. So what happened between the hours of 3 o'clock in the morning and 7:20? The last time Rachel saw her sister, 3 o'clock in the morning, sleeping with the Netflix playing, to about 7:20, when Shelley Washington went in her room and saw her in a pool of blood. The defendant came to that house, a girl he knew. They went to high school together. Came to her house, lifted up her window from the outside, climbed in her room, and hit her in the back of the head multiple times with some type of sharp object. Something so sharp that it caused several deep lacerations, deep cuts in the back of Janae's head. Which ultimately, as you'll hear from the medical examiner, is what caused her death. Blunt force trauma to the head. While he's in this house doing this, at some point in time, he ejaculates onto her underwear. And before he left, he took her laptop, the same one that she'd been watching Netflix on at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because at 7:20, that laptop was gone. Before the testimony that we are going to present to you guys is all said and done, one of the last pieces of testimony you'll hear is from someone named Melina Burkett. And the judge is going to tell you that her testimony and a few other pieces of evidence, you're only allowed to consider it for one reason. One reason. And you have to pay attention to this reason. And that reason is to show that that man Daraian Winfield had the same plan, or used the same plan, not only to break into Janae's house and kill her, but also to go into Melina Burkett's house and try to do the same thing. Now, what Melina's going to tell you about is a week before the defendant went into Janae's house. He went to Melina Burkett's house, also on Radnor Street, on Detroit's east side. You're going to hear evidence how the defendant tried to lift up a window on the outside of that house, because his fingerprints were found there too. She'll tell you about how she was watching TV late at night, and all of a sudden, her door is kicked open. Her bedroom door. And while she's in bed, a guy jumps on top of her and starts stabbing her in the chest. She's going to tell you about how she fought. She fought back. She ultimately had to pull this knife out of her chest. The blade, the handle had broken off the blade, and the knife was in her chest, and she had to pull it out of her chest. She later found out that it was a knife from her kitchen. She's going to tell you about how, while they were fighting, this person that broke into her house, who she'll identify as that man right there, Daraian Winfield, how he clocked her in the head with a lamp, cut her head open. And how when they ultimately stopped fighting at one point, similar to Janae, she says, "What are you doing this for?" And he looks right at her and points right to her vagina. And she responds, says, "You did all this." She'll say it a little differently, but for sex. So she'll tell you how she tried to calm him down. And she wanted to say, "Hey, I want to make sure my kids are all right." And his response to her, you'll hear, was, "Misha ain't home." Mr. Winfield also went to high school with Misha. Same school as Janae. Ultimately, Melina fought back and hit Mr. Winfield with a taser a couple times that she had plugged into her house. And he ran from the house. You're going to be able to look at that evidence, like I said, for one purpose. And that's going to be that the defendant had the same plan or scheme to get into these houses and engage in some form of assault and sexual assault. Both on Radnor Street, both at night. Girls that he went to high school with, that he knew. Violent assaults with some type of sharp object, some type of sexual assault or attempted. In the middle of the night, climbing in through a window. The defendant wants you to believe that he wasn't in either of these houses. But you're going to hear from Melina Burkett too, that his DNA was found on the handle of the knife. A knife that came from inside of her house. All the same plan. But when he got into Janae's, he did a lot more damage than killed her. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of all this testimony, you're going to understand that the only just verdict here, beyond a reasonable doubt, the only just verdict is that that man is guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Champagne. Mr. Callahan, would you like to make an opening or reserve it?
Judge, I'm going to go ahead and make mine.
Thank you.
Before you start, I'm sorry. Just 1 second.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone had a good weekend. This is my opportunity to explain to you what I believe the evidence will tend to show in this case. It's not time for argument, so try to refrain from doing that. But before I even get into the evidence, first and foremost is you have to recall that as we stand here right now, this man is presumed to be innocent of all charges. You've got to go into this with an open mind, clear of any preconceived notions that he may have done anything at all. Secondly, they have to prove who and what, and they have to do that beyond a reasonable doubt. Your oath is that you will not convict unless there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Finally, the defendant has a right to remain silent. And I'm not sure whether he's going to remain silent or he's going to testify, but if he remains silent, then you cannot use that against him. Okay. The prosecution has presented an outline of what they believe they're going to be able to prove in this matter. I'm going to suggest to you that the victim in this case and the defendant were friends, had been friends for a substantial period of time. Mr. Daraian Winfield had been to that house before. He had been in that house. Janae Washington had been to his house on a number of occasions. They were friends. In fact, one of their mutual friends will be testifying in this trial. So what they're asking you to do is to believe that a friend would sneak through a window, brutally assault somebody, sexually assault them, and then leave. That, right from Jump Street, leaves me anyway with an inclination that there's some guesswork going on here. And I believe that's what the evidence is going to demonstrate, that there is guesswork going on here. Nobody knows how the assailant got into that bedroom that night. Nobody knows. They can say, oh, well, there's a fingerprint on the window. Well, guess what? The evidence is going to show you that we can't date fingerprints. No one knows when that fingerprint was put there. Okay? Number two, who's to say that Janae Washington didn't let whoever came in that evening in the house? There is absolutely no evidence as to how the assailant got in there. You know, the sister who's going to testify is right in the bedroom next door. You walk out of her bedroom and you walk into a door and you're in Janae's room. She didn't hear anything that night. Nothing. We don't know if Janae got up and opened the door or if she unlocked the window from inside. You don't know. You're just not going to know. I mean, what happened to her is by no means excusable. It is tragic, and I'm not trying to underscore that at all. It is terrible what's happened. But it's very important in this type of case that you not get caught up in the tendency to be emotionally swept away with the suggestions that they want to place. And I'll tell you, we're going to get into some very specific evidence with regards to fingerprints. I manner in which they were collected, how they were analyzed, and ladies and gentlemen, as late as of last week, the man who for the Detroit police analyzed these prints changed his report, changed one of his reports. There will be evidence from the defense expert, Mr. Schwartz, that on the window of Janae Washington's bedroom are prints that are capable of identification, yet weren't considered. In his report, though, you know what he says? In his report, he says, there are no unidentifiable prints, other identifiable prints, excuse me, on that window. Well, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to suggest otherwise. That's significant. There's a brother at the house. Janae lets him in around midnight. The floors in that house are wooden. If you have a basement in a house where the floors are wooden, people walk across it, it makes noise. The brother was not awakened at all that evening. The girlfriend was not awakened at all that evening. All that is known is that Miss Washington got out of bed that morning of, I believe it was January 7th, that she found her daughter in a pool of life, still alive. There's been reference by the people to searches. Now, there was a search of Daraian's mother's home. Nothing was located there. There is a search of an apartment. What you're going to hear is that Mr. Winfield had an apartment at 4811 Cadju, it was apartment 7, but that he didn't occupy this alone. They found certain items of evidence. They found a red hoodie, they found a jacket. What they didn't find is, they will tell you, they believe that the murder weapon was the laptop computer. They didn't find the laptop computer there. And there's going to be other evidence with regards to the DNA. You know, it's what I believe the evidence will reflect is that they did a marvelous job of detecting the blood of Janae Washington on a hoodie. However, what I don't believe the evidence will reflect is that the DNA of the defendant is on that red hoodie. It's not there. Ladies and gentlemen, they want to introduce evidence and will be introducing evidence with regards to Ms. Melina Burkett. The judge is going to give you a specific instruction, and this is paramount. He is on trial for first-degree murder here, home invasion, and criminal sexual conduct in the second degree. He is not on trial for anything that may have happened to Melina Burkett. You cannot base a judgment of guilt premised on what you believe he may have done somewhere else. And there's going to be some specifics about Ms. Melina Burkett's testimony that are, I believe, somewhat striking. Number one, she tased the individual that assaulted her in the face numerous times. And according to her, there should be burn marks on his face where she tased him. And I believe she's going to testify that she nailed him about 5 times. This is a short period of time before the incident with Janae Washington. No marks on the You know, I noticed when the people gave their statement, opening statement, that they don't try to define at what point in time the semen of the defendant gets into the panties of his friend. And I think that the evidence is going to reflect that they can't date this semen, even though it may come back positive to the defendant. They don't know when that semen was put there. They don't know if it was that night, the week before, a month before. The defendant and the victim were friends, both seniors in high school, both slated to graduate. Neither of them are graduating. Ladies and gentlemen, after you consider all the evidence, I'm going to ask the defendant not guilty.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan.